we're back, and today we're making pupusas. We're gonna start with a pork butt, and we dry it, we marinate it with mustard, salt, and pepper. We cook it for 3 hours undisturbed. Then we cook it for another 8 hours, every hour spritzing it at 270. Then we wrap it. We rise the temperature to 295, leave it alone for 2 more hours, and then we let it rest. This is Chef Aaron Franklin, whose recipe that is. And when I got to meet him, I told him that I take his pork and put it in pupusas, and he was really generous with his time, and he was excited about the recipe, so that was pretty cool. His restaurant, by the way, is in Austin, Texas, and it was one of the best first bites of food I've ever had in my life, so I highly recommend it. Here we are, getting the veggies ready for the food processor. We take jalapenos, bell peppers, and onions. I am a big fan of red onions for just about everything. I know that's kind of like not always intuitive, but I love red onions, so I will chop it up and throw it into just about anything I can find. Up next, we take the pork butt and we start breaking it apart. As you can see, even though it's been resting for a couple days in the fridge, it still pulls apart just as easily as it would if it was straight out of the oven. So it's just super tender and salty and fatty, and the bark on it is crunchy. And again, it just pulls apart really nicely, and it adds a ridiculous amount of flavor to the pupusas that we'll be making. Pupusas, by the way, are a Salvadorian dish, so if you're not familiar, go to a Salvadorian restaurant, eat some pupusas before you make them at home. I am not at all educated in making pupusas, so this is my kind of like riff on them. I love them, and I wanted to make my own, so this is just my attempt. I've made these before. My kids will only eat pupusas at home. They will not eat restaurant pupusas, even though restaurant pupusas are delicious. They won't eat anything but the ones I make at home, and I attribute that exclusively to Aaron Franklin's smoked pork butt recipe, because it is just fucking phenomenal, to quote Yo-Yo Ma. Here I am mixing the vegetables into the pork. What you see me doing here is mixing all of the different parts of the pork, because I shredded it in small pieces and processed them in small pieces. I wanted to make sure that I incorporated all of the different parts of that pork shoulder into the minced mixture. So here I am mincing more vegetables, and again, I'm not just dropping them into the pork and mixing them in. I'm incorporating the pork into itself, so that I don't have, and it unfortunately it happened to a friend of mine who was over for dinner. He took a bite, and or all of the salt from that one part of the pork was in his one bite. So big shout out to a homie who suffered for my art. And but you know, I'm hoping that that's not what is going to happen, and that's why I keep moving it around and mixing it and trying to make sure that it doesn't there's not just a big piece of fat or a big piece of salty bark or a big piece of whatever in any one bite. And always clean your surfaces, especially when dealing with pork and poultry. So here I am taking a big wet soapy sponge, that's what it's called, and wiping down my surface. To make the salsa recipe, here is my mom.
Pues ahora y vos lo decís mejor.
Sí, no, vos decilo.
Okay.
Y después yo lo
Tomate, cebolla, lo colás.
hasta se hierve.
Se hierve hasta que se cose. Lo colás y ya después que está licuado, le agregas una cuchara.
Lo licuás, no lo colás.
Lo licuás. Le agregas una cuchara de orégano.
De polvo.
Sí, de polvo.
Y una tapita.
Una tapadera de vinagre. O un chorrito, pueden decirlo también.
Sí.
Y sal y pimienta. Y es todo, papadito, y que hierva.
¿Y esto?
Ya eso, pues ya sabes que lo picas todo. La zanahoria, el chile jalapeño, cebolla y el repollo. Ya picado lo coces squishy y lo
Con agua
Entonces,
bajo,
con
agua caliente y sal.
Y sal. Que se salga, porque la sal es lo que te lo va a guardar, lo cocina. Y ya después lo lavas unas 3 veces y seguís hasta que se ponga de la textura que querás. Y ya pues ya está, los nomás tostos.
Después ahí sí lo...
Es una taza de vinagre.
Pero lo secas todo.
Los curros, se
Los
escurre.
curris, sí.
Entonces le pones una taza de vinagre y 2 de agua. Y le pones también orégano, sal, pimienta y esto.
So at this point I realized that my masa harina was no longer viable. So I had to go pick up dinner at El Gallejero. We came back the next day with new masa, and here's how we prepared it. You take your cups full of masa and you add 1.5 cups of hot water, almost scalding water, to the masa. And again, you knead it, you work it, and then you get it to a texture where you feel like it's coming together, and you start incorporating little bits of water back in or more into it to get it to be this kind of doughy texture that doesn't stick to your hands. We left it a little bit under because I'm always working with water at the counter, so I could spare a little bit of that tackiness because I knew I would incorporate water back into the dough as I was making the shells. So I cheat a little bit. I use a tortilla press to help me get my form, and then I fill the masa with the pork and vegetable filling that you saw me make earlier. And in this case, and I know, please, my Salvadorian friends, don't come after me, I use mozzarella because, one, I don't have easy access to Salvadorian cheese, and two, I like the stringiness of it. I like how it pulls, and I know that in some cases you're also supposed to work the cheese into the minced pork, but I like to have flexibility to decide if I need to add a little bit more or a little bit less to each pupusa, so I keep them separate. You can do it either way. I did get some flack from my aunt for not having it together, but again, just go as you learn as you go, and go as you go. So that first one I dropped, as you can see, I could tell that I had made it too thin and the masa had cracked, so I put it on the grill just to make sure that I could get my temperature and texture and timing right, but I knew that that first one was not going to be one that was for sharing. That was my taste sample, and then the second one, as you could see there, I got the masa to not break. So then we started making them. Again, just press the masa, pipe in the filling, and pipe in the cheese. Flip about 3 minutes on each side. Flip, and then it just becomes an assembly line after that point. Here, my aunt showed up, and she wanted to help. So she came in. She worked the dough a little bit more. Remember what I told you a little bit earlier about the dough wasn't pliable enough. This is what I mean. She wanted a different texture, so she worked the dough even more and really got it to her liking, adding more water to each serving that she made, and then working it with her hand. She's way more of an expert. She makes tortillas by hand, so she was able to work the dough with her hand. She didn't need my little tortilla press nonsense, and she made a handful of pupusas for us as well, which were also delicious. And after this, I asked her to help me make the masa too, so we got it a little bit more hand pliable and softer, and it was all good. Both of them were delicious. Not to brag or anything, but really what sets these apart from anything you're gonna find at a restaurant is that fucking all credit to Chef Franklin, that 10-hour pork shoulder, slow roasted in the Traeger. So, you know, it's got that flavor from the wood, it's got the bark from the slow cooking process, it's tender on the inside, pulls apart. All of it, all of the magic is in that minced pork. And here, the little guy, my 10-year-old, likes to mix his own. Like I said earlier, the kids refuse to eat pupusas from anywhere but home. So here the kids are helping me, or actually the 10-year-old is helping me make his own, because he likes to have contests of to see whose pupusas are better, mine or his. He always wins, of course, and you can see there his little tiny hands trying to fill the pupusa with the right amount of meat and cheese. Overall, it was a great experience. It's delicious as always, and so glad that I could share it with you guys. So thanks for watching, and I hope you get adventurous and choose to make your own. And you know what, there's as long as you're feeding your family and you're happy about it, you're enjoying yourselves, there's no right or wrong. As long as you don't poison anybody and everybody enjoys the food, make sure that you're doing it with love, and it'll be delicious.